Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe San Diego, along with Isha Azim from Racing with Isha and Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast, welcoming you to another exciting episode of Grid Live Pre-Race, where we're going to talk NASCAR, Formula One, and INDYCAR. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Colin, Show, Mark, Robin, and David for investing in us each and every month. You too can invest in the Grid Network through here, or buy me a coffee where you can buy a cup of coffee for a particular member of the Grid Network team. And now we have Super Chat activated here on YouTube, so hit that Super Chat button. We'll definitely thank you on the air for your support, and of course, you forward your Super Chat to a member of the Grid Network team. Isha, a lot of teamwork is being talked about this weekend for the NASCAR Cup Series at Daytona, because this is a track we're drafting. The teamwork is going to be huge, and looks like it's going to be a very exciting race at Daytona.
Yeah, Joe, and for the second year in a row, there's only one spot in the NASCAR playoffs that's up for grabs at Daytona. Bubba Wallace holds the spot entering the weekend, but Chase Elliott and 20 other drivers will try to win the race to claim the final playoff spot. Bubba Wallace is starting fourth, and Chase Elliott is currently 23rd. Bubba can point his way in if there is a repeat winner, and here is how he can do it. The first way is to score 10 stage points and finish 15th or better, and the second way is to score 20 stage points and finish 25th or better. And if we have a repeat winner, regardless of the stage points, we will have to place 14th or better. Only Ty Gibbs and Daniel Suarez can overtake Bubba by points. Everyone else must win. So, Alex, let's start with you. Is Bubba Wallace in a position to race his race and know as long as he or the 15 drivers locked in the playoffs win, he is in?
As long as Bubba Wallace has a clean race and someone new doesn't win, I think he's solid. But you can't rely on Daytona, right? And it's just he's in a position. I think he's in the best position of anyone who's not locked into the playoffs. But he's still going to just have to run solid, because if he gets wrecked out, he'll lose out on points. But if someone else wins, he gets knocked out. But he's still in the best position just because of where he is in the point standings. And as long as we don't get a new winner, he should be okay. But you can't rely on that. I mean, Chase Briscoe's on the pole, and Chase Briscoe winning would knock Bubba Wallace out. So a lot of things could happen, but all Bubba needs to do is just try and have a clean race, I think.
A clean race is what Bubba needs to have, and I feel he has to feel pretty good about where he is. Up towards the front, if those Toyotas could work together, they have a really good shot. If we're going to have green flag pit stops, that's where they're going to be really weak, because they lack the numbers compared to Ford. If we have a situation where you got Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski up towards the front, Bubba Wallace is going to be happy to see one of those drivers win, because they're ahead of him in the playoff standings. They already got their spot locked in based on the points. So overall, I feel Bubba Wallace is in a prime position to get his first playoff appearance finalized at the end of the race, because the big thing is this. He could really just be around Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, knowing that if he's directly ahead of them or directly behind him, they're not going to outpoint him. Then it just comes down to who's leading the race, especially with 20 laps to go. You know Tyler Reddick's going to be there up towards the front if he's not caught up in a big crash. Same with Denny Hamlin. If those two are up towards the front, they're going to do everything they can to prevent a repeat winner. To prevent a non-repeat winner take the win. Because if they could get another race win for a driver that has won, or Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Bubba's in.
And with Bubba Wallace, the hardest part for him was the road courses, and he made it through. I mean, he did lose a lot of points through them, but he did much better than I thought he would. So, and honestly, he's really good at the super speedways. And he's won at Talladega before. He nearly won the Daytona 500 a couple times. So he's in a really good position, I think. And he's probably one of the only guys who are in this position who's actually in a better position going into Daytona than at the road courses.
Yeah, definitely. And now turning towards Chase Elliott, he is the main driver outside the playoffs that everyone is following. A disappointing weekend at the Glen has many wondering if the team can deliver a perfect race at Daytona. His best finish is second twice. The last time was the 2021 Daytona 500. However, 8 finishes of 20th or worse, including the last 2 races here. Qualifying did not go so well, and Ford will likely work together to see a Ford driver win. Joe, The big question is, can Chase Elliott outperform everyone and win?
I don't think he can outperform everyone. I just don't have the confidence in that number 9 Chevrolet team. I mean, qualifying wasn't that great, and this is a track where we've seen, especially Daytona 500, Hendrick Motorsports are always towards the front. Maybe they sacrifice qualifying speed for race setup, but you got to go through all those Fords, and the Fords have traditionally worked pretty good when it comes to racing at the Super Speedway, Talladega, and Daytona. I think he's going to need luck. I think he's going to need some of the drivers, especially Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, to have bad luck. You're going to need the big one, take out some of your big contenders, and survive, get around it, don't get damaged. That's the biggest way I see him getting the win. I just don't see the performance there to win unless Hendrick Motorsports give him every experimental part to get him towards the front. But we just know, as Alex has said, you cannot rely on this track. You cannot depend on it. You could be fast, one lap leading it, but then you get in the wrong lane, you're getting shuffled back to 20th place, and it's game over.
Can Chase Elliott win? Of course he can. But anyone can. Anyone in the field can win this race. And the other thing with Chase Elliott is that his teammate Alex Bowman also needs a win, so Hendrick Motorsports can't just put all three of their other cars and push the 9 to the win. Also, Chevrolet, Trackhouse Racing, Ross Chastain's going to be trying to push Daniel Suarez to the win, and you also got teams like Spire who are trying to get Corey LaJoie in, for example. And then the Fords are just crazy good. You're going to have to get around them. And the Fords, they're trying to get Austin Cindric in, for example. Toyotas are trying to get Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs in. There's just a lot of factors in play, as not even mentioning all the chaos that Daytona can bring. I don't see it. It's possible, but it's possible for everyone.
Yeah, Alex, as you said, his teammate Alex Bowman is also trying to get in the playoffs. And a dreadful situation Hendrick Motorsports wants to avoid is Elliott and Bowman missing the playoffs. So if Bowman and Elliott don't get in, does this raise questions about potential team changes like the swapping of crew chiefs?
I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's possible. They've done this before. They've switched around all the crew chiefs around a Hendrick multiple times in the past. I don't think it would hurt, but people seem to forget that Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson did just win a championship a few years ago. So I don't know if they necessarily need to. Maybe give it another year, because Chase Elliott had a weird year. So did Alex Bowman. Both of them were out with injuries for a bit, and Elliott had a suspension for a race. So I don't think this is necessarily the year they need to be like, oh, we need to change our crew chiefs because we didn't make the playoffs. There's a lot of different factors. If they would not have had their injuries and the suspension for Elliott, they'd probably both be in ahead of Bubba Wallace in points right now. And they'd be the two fighting for that last spot on points rather than Bubba and Ty Gibbs. So I don't think crew chief swapping is necessary just yet.
I 100% agree, and you bring up a good point, Alex. When it comes to the points, if Chase Elliott did not miss those races, 6 for the injury, a 7th one for suspension, if he was to score 15 points average on all of them, he'll be well within the top 6 in my opinion. Alex Bowman, higher up if he didn't miss those races for those injuries. This is just one of those deals where I think they have to just go back. Alex Bowman, first year with his brand new crew chief. Okay, this is our first year. It didn't go work so great. Let's work on next year, make it better. Because remember, this is a crew chief a lot of people thought you just took from Michael McDowell. Great things are coming. You can't just judge it off 1 year when Bowman missed out several races. With Alan Gustafson, Chase Elliott, I think that is where, similar to how Rick Hendrick had to intervene with Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson early on when they were just coming so close to championships, sit down with the two of them. Hey, next year we got to be on the same page. We cannot have mistakes like Watkins Glen. Kerr put us in a bad spot.
And to add another thing on with Alex Bowman, he had a huge penalty early in the year, a big points penalty. So he missed races. He had a big points penalty. He was the points leader at one point. Alex Bowman was. And now that's just not there. He lost so many points. I think he'd probably be where Harvick and Keselowski are, quite frankly, Alex Bowman, if he would have not had all these issues.
And now, while everyone is following the drivers' playoff battle, there are 2 big points battles that we'll be following. The first involves the Owners' Championship and playoffs. The number 9 team is ahead of the 23 Toyota team in the Owners' Championship, and this happened because the nine have been in every race with different drivers, while Chase Elliott was suspended or recovering from injury. A 30-point difference between the two, so Bubba needs to win, or see Chase have another bad race like last weekend. Joe, if Chase is in a position not to win, but to secure a playoff spot for the owner's standing, does the team tell him not to risk it?
It's going to be so dependent on where Bubba's running. If Bubba's up towards the front and there's a line of Toyotas and Chase is the first Chevrolet with a bunch of Chevrolets behind him, he has to make that move, try to go for the win, secure the number 9 in the orange playoffs, and still give himself a shot at it. But if Bubba has a problem, is out early, if Chase is behind Fords or Toyotas with a handful of laps to go, and he could just sit comfortably there, get Rick Hendrick, the number 9, another team in the playoffs, the third in the owners' playoffs, he might have to bite the bullet because at the end, if he was to make a move, spin out, crash, they're completely out of the playoffs, and I think people will be very critical about that. We know how Chase Elliott, it seems that team or that driver makes a mistake, they just get a lot of attention. This is the opportunity for them to just, if they could get the owner playoff position or Rick Hendrick, that's something to hold their head about and something to motivate that team in the playoffs.
And Joe, the owners playoff, that's where all the money's at. The teams don't get the money for the drivers. They get all the money for the owners playoff. So quite honestly, Hendrick might be wanting to get the 9 in on the owners more than the drivers at this point. They might even, I'm not saying they will, I don't think they will, but maybe they'll think of it as, you know what, let's not try and crash and lose our owners points here, and let's just focus on trying to stay in the owners points and just keep the 23 from winning the race. But that's still another situation there where someone else, like the 7, could go and win, and that wouldn't even matter anyway.
Now, we've talked about Bubba versus Chase as one of the main points of this race, but two teammates, Denny Hamlin versus Martin Truex Jr., are also for the regular season championship. 15 playoff points are on the line, and the playoffs have often come down to a single point between advancing and not. Denny Hamlin has a successful record of winning the Daytona races, including the Daytona 500. Martin Truex Jr. has not won at a superspeedway before, and a 39-point difference, so Denny needs to win, collect stage points, and have Truex suffer a bad race. Now, does Truex have the least burden of any driver racing, knowing he had a solid race, he'll be the regular season champion? Alex, what do you think?
If I'm Truex, honestly, I think I would just stay in the back and not get any crashes, because 39 points, I mean, sure, Denny could win both stages and then it would only be, what, a 19-point difference. If I'm Truex, I'm just chilling. Like, I wouldn't be trying too hard. I think at the end of the race, you'd be pushing a bit to try and maintain that lead if Denny has solid stages, because those points for the regular season do matter, and it is a lot of points. But if I'm Truex, I'm not risking everything to lose those points throughout the race. I'd be waiting until the end.
I agree. I think he could easily do what we've seen, especially before the stage era of racing occurred. Just hang in the back, let the trouble occur, because especially the end of stages, stage 1, stage 2, 10 playoff points, I think you're going to see cautions coming to those stage ends voided. If Denny Hamlin gets caught up into it, well, then you got to secure pretty much. And then you could go on that third stage and really try to go for a win, collect more stage points. Because, like you said, Isha, it could come down to 1 point before. It can't hurt to get it if you're going for the win, but I would not go for it in the stages, because if you crash out at the end of stage 1 or stage 2, you're missing out on those precious stage points and, of course, the finishing points as well.
Looking at the Fords now, we have 11 in the top 20, 7 in the top 10, and 5 have yet to win. 6 if you count Riley Herbst, who is not racing full-time in the Cup Series. Chase Briscoe is on the pole, and Eric Almirola and Harrison Burton are in the top 3. So starting with Joe, can Ford cause havoc and help a winless driver take the final playoff spot?
Looking at these top 3, I think it's already starting to cause havoc. We've seen how Eric Almirola, he has won here at Daytona, granted with rain shortened race, but he's good at the super speedway. The Wood brothers, they seem to always have fast cars out here. We know they have an alliance with Roger Penske. This could be a great opportunity for Harrison Burton to get his first career win We've seen plenty of drivers get their first win at this event. And Chase Briscoe, considering what they've been through as a team with the penalty, being put in a must-win situation, at times that car just looked dreadful. Even running was just a Rick Rare racing towards the back. If he can put together a solid race and especially get other Fords to help him out, if you're talking about Kevin Harvick, you got Buescher, ones that have won races pushing you, that could be the ultimate surprise because, I mean, Chase Briscoe, I think most people don't have to get into the playoffs. We know that's going to be bad news for Bubba Wallace. I think it might be a little bit of good news if you're in the playoffs because you know Chase Briscoe's not going to have that kind of speed and momentum rest of the playoffs, but it's already playing havoc in my opinion.
I agree, Joe. I mean, Stewart-Haas Racing swept the front row, and they've been running like 25th all year. So I mean, that's havoc all on its own. And another thing with Ford, Michael McDowell is already locked in to the playoffs, and he has a teammate, Todd Gilliland, who's also looking for a win. That could just blow everyone's playoff grid up because who had Todd Gilliland making the playoffs? I mean, that's possible. Todd Gilliland was up toward the front at Talladega, if I remember right. So, I mean, anything's possible. And Ford, they've been very, very strong on these super speedways lately. I think RFK, although both of them are in the playoffs locked in, they might be the ones to be reckoned with the most over at Ford. But man, front row, Stewart-Haas Racing, both of those teams could definitely change things up.
Yeah, and the Coke Zero Sugar 400 is tonight, and we will recap it tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap-Up. It will be an early show because we will go on the air right after the IndyCar race, but the first race on Sunday is the Formula One Dutch Grand Prix. Formula One is finally back after a long summer break. Alex, Verstappen is probably everyone's pick a winner, but what else is happening with the race?
That's right, Isha. The Formula One Dutch Grand Prix is expected to be a race where Max Verstappen will cruise to victory. But before diving into the coverage of Formula One, we want to provide the latest update on Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo crashed into the wall at the banked Turn 3 wall with Oscar Piastri. Piastri was ahead of him and crashed, and Ricciardo said he had nowhere to go. According to ESPN, Daniel Ricciardo suffered a broken metacarpal. The metacarpal bones are the palm area of the hand. There is no confirmed timetable on when he will return. Joe, what do you think? Did you see anything that indicated Daniel was hurt through the replays on ESPN?
When it came to watching this crash occur, Daniel Ricciardo was in a really tough situation. If he had continued and made contact with Oscar Piastri, that would have been really hard, just brutal. I don't know if it will be the exact same injury because when he hit the wall, that is where we saw the wheel snap and then the injury occurred. Big thing I think when it comes to this track and when we saw this crash occur is even with the banking, we know they added banking to make it safer. Those walls are treacherous. I know we're going to talk about the walls later with Leclerc, Sargent, but this track, it's hard to pass. Daniel Ricciardo was just in a really tough spot. You're going to either hit Piastri, risk getting hurt, but that wall, the way it just snapped that wheel, that just looked really painful, and hopefully he'll recover quickly and fully to come back.
Now, Isha, we know this is a big blow to his return to Formula One, but Liam Lawson is going to be in his place. We have back-to-back race weekends for Formula One and then a weekend off before the Singapore Grand Prix, one of the most demanding races of the year. Do you anticipate Daniel Ricciardo and his team will elect to ensure a full recovery and return in Suzuka, or can Singapore be a real return date?
You know, first off, this is really unfortunate because he did only return about 2 races ago. And I know he's put in a lot of work during the summer break to, try to make up for that lost time. So seeing what happened in today's race, it must have been really demoralizing for him. But I think that him and the team is going to choose to wait until Suzuka just because, they don't want to cause any further damage to his hand. And I have a quote right here that I wrote down. And he said in one of the interviews right after he got released from the hospital, he said, "Obviously, I'd love to get back soon, but I also want to ensure we do things the right way so I come back strong and competitive." So to me, that sounds like as much as he would love to return to Singapore, I think he's going to wait about the month or so just to, give his hand the proper time to heal and recover from it.
Of course, any additional updates will be reported on Grid tonight on Wednesday. So Max Verstappen is the clear favorite this weekend. He was fastest in Free Practice 1, then second behind Lando Norris in Free Practice 2, and in Free Practice 3 saw Max Verstappen fastest. Then in qualifying, Alex Albon and Williams loved the mixed conditions out there, and they used different tires to get into Q3. However, 2 red flags in Q3 appeared to ruin their strategy as the track dried up, allowing everyone to set faster lap times on the dry. Logan Sargent and Charles Leclerc were into the barrier and both looked to hit the wall pretty hard. Charles Leclerc is on his 4th and final gearbox of the season, and the impact looks to require a new one. Joe, will Leclerc have to take a new gearbox, and what's a salvageable result for him this weekend?
It looks like he has to get a new one, and especially after what happened in Monaco a couple seasons ago where he had the pole, crashed, didn't even get to start the race. I don't think Ferrari's going to look at this as we're going to risk. I mean, he's starting 9th place. Yeah, you're going to be further back. What's the salvageable result? You're going to be dependent on the pit strategy. Granted, we don't have wet weather in the forecast. I think he's going to be fast enough to at least get around Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly. If you could get points, that's great, but this is probably already a weekend where you just got to, whatever you could take, go from it and move on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Joe. I think that Ferrari will definitely go for a new gearbox. And just a reminder, Charles Leclerc will have to pay a penalty for this. But I don't think him or the team want to have any other sort of disadvantage going into the race tomorrow, considering that he will be starting from 9th position. So I think they're going to go for the gearbox. And as I said, he's going to have to pay a fine for it. But that's just what he's got to do now.
Then once qualifying wrapped up, Max Verstappen won the pole, with Lando Norris and George Russell in 3rd. The big surprise with Williams in 4th, with Alex Albon outqualifying Fernando Alonso. So Verstappen has 4 Mercedes-powered engines behind him from 4 different teams. Is this a concern for Max having 4 drivers with the same engine behind him? Or since it's 4 separate teams, is it not a concern? Isha, let's start with you.
I don't think there's many concerns that Max Verstappen has at this point. Even though he's got those 4 Mercedes engines behind him, I think that because they're coming with different teams and there's going to be different drivers, driving those engines, I don't think it's going to be that big of a concern. However, I do think that it'll be an interesting fight for, the podium positions tomorrow. I don't think Max Verstappen's going to have any concerns, though. I don't think it's really his issue, but I think 2nd and 3rd place for them, it'll definitely be up there.
I have to agree. Max Verstappen, if our car is in good setup and no issues, no mistakes from Max Verstappen, he's going to walk away with the win, really the battles for 2nd place. And if anything, George Russell is going to just do everything he can to race Lando Norris hard. Best thing that could happen for Max Verstappen is if he looks in the rearview mirror and sees the Mercedes and the McLaren racing each other. I don't know if Alex Albon's pace will allow him to be up there. He might fall comfortably within the top 10. But overall, I think Max Verstappen, he's just going to run his own race. If this was 2 Mercedes or 2 McLarens, that would have been bad news. But the way it all worked out with all the different teams there, including Fernando Alonso, I think it's just going to be Max Verstappen leading a train of Mercedes engines to the end of the race.
Now let's shift back to Alex Albon, who's having a great weekend so far. Isha, so Alex Albon, when you see that he gets another top 10 start, when you look at his expectations when he joined Williams to now, how is he doing compared to his rookie teammate? And is Albon worthy of a top-tier ride?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I was pretty surprised seeing today's results from the starting lineup of the Dutch Grand Prix that we'll see tomorrow. But I think that Alex Albon, even in the past few races, he has been doing a really good job of driving that Williams. And with Sargent, what we've seen is that he has been qualifying pretty low on the grid. But even today, he did well. He surprised us, actually. And so I think that Alex Albon has been doing a great job. And as far as it comes to whether he's worthy of a top-tier ride, I'm not sure, but I think that of a great ride, he is worthy, and I think that we'll definitely see some special stuff coming from him tomorrow.
Now, Lewis Hamilton is starting 13th after a weekend that looked promising during practice with such fast pace. We We saw his teammate George Russell take third in qualifying today, so he'll get the preferred strategy in the race. Mercedes knows a win here will be hard unless Max Verstappen makes an error or has mechanical issues. But the McLaren of Lando Norris has been fast all weekend. Is Mercedes' strategy focused on getting around Norris, or do you give Lando the advantage over them going into the race? Isha, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think Mercedes' strategy is just going to be to do the best they can. And obviously, that does mean cutting around Lando because he did finish second. So he's going to be starting from that front row. So I know George Russell is definitely going to be trying to give Lando like the best fight that he can. And as far as Hamilton is concerned, Hamilton is going to be starting pretty low or pretty far back in the race. So I think he is going to try his best. And I think Lando definitely has an advantage going into the race. You know, he is going to be starting second. I don't know if that advantage is going to help him beat Max Verstappen, but I think that the advantage will help him at least get a podium finish tomorrow.
I have to agree. I feel at the beginning of the season, we would not be talking about Lando and the McLaren outpacing the Mercedes, and I feel they have been doing that in this race. I think Lando Norris has the advantage over George Russell and the Mercedes. Clean start is going to be very important. Having a good race because we know Mercedes are going to do everything they can, whether it's the overcut, undercut to get around. I just feel like the pace in that McLaren lately, he cannot stay up there with Max Verstappen, but he can at least get away from third place, fourth place. Easy podium, I think, is going to be in the results for Lando Norris.
Lots to watch tomorrow in the Dutch Grand Prix. It'll kick off Sunday's race. So, our next race to talk about today is the NTT INDYCAR Series. They're at the last oval of the 2023 season. Isha, I'll toss it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. You know, taking a look at IndyCar, IndyCar is at the Worldwide Technology Raceway for the Bommarito 500, the first opportunity for Alex Palou to claim his second NTT IndyCar Series championship. So he enters the race with a 101-point lead over Scott Dixon and a 105-point lead over Joseph Newgarden. If he leaves this weekend with a more than 98-point lead over second place, Alex Palou will be the IndyCar champion. So no matter what happens, Palou will leave this weekend with the points lead and enter Portland as the leader. The first practice should have wrapped up, but due to rain, the cars have not hit the track yet. So Alex, starting with you, without practice and limited track time, which drivers do you believe will have an advantage?
The three Team Penske drivers have a huge advantage, I think, because they have just been the masters of the oval, specifically Joseph Newgarden, who is looking to sweep all the ovals this season. I feel like practice time, you need practice time to be able to catch those three, but without practice time, and we might get some later today, but the track's going to be different compared to the race tomorrow. I don't know how much they're actually going to learn, if they get on the track today at all, but I don't know. I think Joseph Newgarden is just a huge beneficiary of this, for sure.
Easily Joseph Newgarden, biggest driver to capitalize, gain an advantage on this. Scott McLaughlin, we know he's fast in the ovals, but one of the big things, he still has not won oval yet. I think this is going to hurt him a little bit. For Alex Palou, I wouldn't stress about this too much because big thing is just have a good race. You don't have to wrap it up this weekend. If anything, have a good solid day. You just one race closer, Portland, to wrap it up. So overall, I think this is a big advantage for Joseph Newgarden as well. For Palou, just write it off. Just go out there, focus on the best you can do. Because as long as even if Alex Palou was to finish third or fourth and you got Newgarden taking the win, he still controls the IndyCar Championship at Portland.
Now, Gateway is the third oval of the year, and earlier this week, Alex, Jackson, and I had the opportunity to talk to some of the drivers about the Gateway race. Here is what rookie drivers Stingray Robb and Benjamin Pedersen had to say about Gateway.
Gateway historically has been a very good race for the team with David Malukas, my teammate this year, finishing on the podium there last year and almost winning it. So it's very encouraging to see that. I think that we can hope for that again this year. It's just a matter of making sure that we make the right strategy calls and then dealing with the new alternate tire compound they're introducing there. That'll be interesting. It's the first time on an oval they'll have an alternate tire compound.
On a Gateway, on a personal note, I've had a lot of success there. That was where I had my first ever race on an oval in Indy Lights 2 years ago. So I think every time I've been there for 3 races now, because we had a double header the first year in lights, I've been on the podium every time. So personally, it's been a very good track for me. Obviously, it'll be in a different car now. So the big thing is just making sure we get the setup in the right window to what I like and what is fast for that car and what lasts long. So yeah, Gateway should be hopefully very strong, especially if we can transfer the Indy 500 knowledge, Texas, the smooth oval setup knowledge. That hopefully should work really well for us.
Now, Stingray Rob made a good point about the alternate tire being in play here. How much can having 2 tire compounds add to the strategy this weekend at Gateway? Joe, starting with you.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. Is this going to be a case where everyone's going to switch on the soft tire around the same time, leave it towards the end, or will somebody, we had a bad run, a bad setup at the beginning, so we're going to switch to that softer tire, try to gain as much ground. The yellow flags, that's going to be a big issue. We've seen how the different tire compounds can shake up a strategy, but we've also seen races where everyone just sort of follows the same thing and there's not a whole lot. Without the practice today, and they can't use the alternate tires during qualifying, I think it's just a bigger question that we're going to find out come race day.
And we've never done this on an oval before. So there's a lot of unknowns going into this race. I have no idea what's going to happen. This could have minimal impact on the race as a little experiment they're trying. Or this could actually determine who wins this race if they nail the strategy perfectly. I mean, I don't know what to expect on this, but it's definitely going to add something to the race. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Now, we have one driver who's not only looking forward to Gateway, but the next 3 races, and that is Scott McLaughlin. 4th place in the points and within striking distance of 2nd place Scott Dixon. We know that he is very fast at Gateway. He won at Portland last year and had a solid Laguna Seca race. He told me about the next 3 races earlier this week, and this is what he had to say.
No doubt. I think for sure we can we can come through and get some points on Joseph and Scott for sure. I feel very strong, like you said, on the next few events. And I felt like last year, even Laguna Seca, like we had really good speed, but I was sort of, doing the right thing by the team and making sure that I was covering Dixon and making sure everything was right. So, my race was hampered. To still get a 6th out of that was really good. So when we go to Laguna Seca, it's a lot different this year with the new repavement and a few things. So, but no, I'm super excited for the end of the year. Like I said, I love Gateway, love Portland, love Laguna, and certainly back myself to get enough points. It's gonna be tough because they're 2 good races that I'm racing against and people behind me to get to the front and get to 2nd place. But that would be a huge tick for me if we could get 2nd in the championship for sure.
Now, Scott McLaughlin is confident about climbing the point standings. Do you anticipate him being a spoiler for Newgarden and Dixon in 2nd place? Alex, what do you think?
I think he could definitely do that. He's just getting better and better every single week. And last year, it looked like he was the guy to beat, but then Joseph Newgarden got around him, and so did David Malukas. I think it's just closing out these oval races is what Scott McLaughlin needs to get better at, which I think in time he will. He's still very early in his IndyCar career after moving from supercars. But for 2nd place, I feel like that might still be between Newgarden and Dixon, but could he? For sure. I mean, he won Portland a year ago, and he's been strong at Gateway last year. I think he might need to have some issues from the 2 of them, maybe, because he is about 40 points behind both of them. But yeah, I think he was my championship pick at the start of the year, so I just think in years to come, he's just going to keep getting better and better.
And you bring up, he came from supercars, still very early in his IndyCar career, and he's already this good where we've been talking about him contending for race wins. The ovals, he's really fast. I could see him getting 2nd place in this championship. I think he could have a very good, solid race, podium finish. Scott Dixon, not exactly the best oval racer, but he is consistently good. If he has a rough race, Scott McLaughlin could easily capitalize on that. Portland, if Scott McLaughlin truly is confident about the car that race weekend, he's going to be very hard to beat like he was last year. And then Laguna Seca, I mean, he's fast there. New surface, that's going to be really interesting. This could be ideal for him to get 2nd place. I think, like you said, Alex, you'll probably need Joseph Newgarden to have some bad luck, which we've seen him mess up in the oval before in Iowa last year. I don't know if it'll happen this race weekend. I think Joseph Newgarden seems to be very determined, but anything could happen in Portland and Laguna Seca.
I will say about Joseph, his deal last year at Iowa was a mechanical failure. So, like, ever since Iowa last year, Joseph has pretty much been perfect on the ovals outside of that mechanical failure at Iowa, too, last year. And this year, he has swept all the ovals. So, I don't know. It would be kind of a miracle, quite frankly, for anyone else for Joseph Newgarden to have any issues on the ovals.
Definitely. And one driver that has to be excited about this weekend is Pato O'Ward, who is still looking for his first win of 2023. Now, Gateway does present that opportunity as he is always good on the ovals, but there is one driver who is looking to make a historic sweep. Joseph Newgarden is looking to sweep all the ovals this year. That includes Texas, Indianapolis, and both Iowa races, and he has won at Gateway before. He is a favorite for the weekend, and here is how Scott McLaughlin answered Jackson Lambros's question about being his teammate.
About Gateway, because your teammate Joseph Newgarden is obviously trying to make a sweep of all the ovals this season. That being said, you've been one of the fastest newer guys on the ovals since you've shown up. What do you think it's going to take for you to get around your teammate and fellow bus bro to get the win?
Yeah, look, it's tough. You know, he's so good, and you know, regardless if I get a good setup or he gets good setup or whatnot, you know, we've all got the same data and details, so it's very hard to separate yourself as a teammate from a guy like him. He's just got so much experience as well as Will. So for me, I'm learning as we go, but I back myself now. I felt really strong at Iowa. I was one of the faster cars against him, you know, all that weekend. Didn't quite get across the line, but feel like we're getting close. And Gateway, we nearly did it the same. We nearly passed him or beat him last year too. We all know how strong he is. It's no lie, but you know, I think there's no doubt in my mind that you know I can get my first over win here in a second, and we nearly did that at Texas last year. You know, and I think Gateway is a track that I really enjoy. That you know that it could happen for us. Just depends on strategy and a few things, but you know we've got to hit our marks and make sure we get it done. Because it seems you know when we go on ovals like that, two crew is very strong. It's not just Joseph; it's Tim Cindric with the strategy. You know, as the car set up from Luke Mason, like they're very good, and it's going to take an all-out effort from all of us to make sure that one, Team Penske's at the front, but two, the 33s to beat you know the two crews. So it's fantastic.
Now, Joseph Newgarden is the driver to beat this weekend, probably more so than Palou, who has never won at an oval. He is only 4 points behind Scott Dixon for second place in the points. Joe, starting with you, does Joseph Newgarden race his race and not focus on the points, Dixon, and especially Palou?
Easily, just focus on what you got to do. You're really good at the ovals, Joseph Newgarden. I would not think about championship, what Palou's doing, what Scott Dixon's doing. Just go out there, race your own race. The competition knows you're the person to beat. If the competition knows you're the person to beat, I feel that's part of the strategy, is getting in their heads, knowing that Joseph Newgarden is going to be the person we have to beat. You're that person. You're the top dog. Let's go out there, hit your marks, take the win.
I totally agree. Just focus on making some history and sweeping the whole season on winning all the ovals, because that's crazy, because he won the Indy 500 as well this year. Just add on to the historic year you're having. I know you're probably not going to win the championship, but hey, if you win the race, that's still adding toward the championship, albeit it's still very, very far out of reach. I think just going out there and having the best race you can, and with him, it'll probably be domination. So just going out there and doing the best he can is what he can do, I think.
Now, as always, the rainy weather would like to take the spotlight this weekend, as rain is expected to last for most of the day. But by 4 p.m., a chance of 24% rain and a cloudy sky. Gateway has lights, and if INDYCAR was to, they could do some sessions under the lights. Alex, starting with you, how big of a difference would it be setting up for under the lights than racing in the daytime?
Well, I think we saw this last year, because last year there was rain. They started the race, and then they got about close-ish to halfway, and then it started raining, and then the cars changed, and that is when, right before the rain hit, Joseph took the lead last year away from Scott McLaughlin, and then when it got nighttime, Joseph was just another level gone, and the 3 and the 2 seemed kind of equal before the rain. So I don't know. It's definitely going to impact the race. It's definitely going to change how these guys set up their cars. But it's tomorrow. The weather looks perfect. There's like no rain in the forecast, so they're not going to be racing under the lights tomorrow. So it's just how much do they actually adjust for the setups tonight? And you know what? Qualifying, if they're doing qualifying under the lights tonight, it's just how much do you prioritize qualifying over the race? I don't know. There's a lot of things at play here.
A lot of things at play, and the one thing I'm wondering too, especially if we qualify under the lights, you know, we're looking at very limited track time. How many drivers are gonna get on those soft tires, alternate tires very early because they're anticipating we may not have the ideal qualifying setup, but we put the race setup in there and the soft tires make up as much ground. Hopefully the yellow flags, the cautions doesn't hurt us when it comes to pit strategy. It's going to be very interesting to see. I think if you're in New Garden position, you're probably thinking, let's just put in there the setup we would normally have because you know you're so good at the ovals. You can make the passes, make it work, and potentially, if for some reason the other teams like Dale Coyne Racing, teams that are not having the greatest season, just go out in the qualifying setup, utilize those soft tires at the beginning and try to get around them. Either way, I just feel like Joseph Newgarden might have this race wrapped up.
Yeah, and now let's hand it over to Alex for our Pick a Winner segment.
That's right, Isha. It's time for Pick a Winner. If you're in the chat, let us know who you're picking for NASCAR, Formula One, and IndyCar. So let's start with myself. For NASCAR, I'm going with an RFK driver. I've been picking Brad Keselowski over on the Gay Racing Podcast. However, for all the super speedways. However, I'm picking Chris Buescher for tonight. It just feels like that 17. They have a lot of good mojo going on right now, so I'm going with Chris Buescher.
I'm going to go with Bubba Wallace for my Pick a Winner.
This has been the hardest one for me. I think I'm going to go, just because of the chaos this is going to create, I'm going to go Harrison Burton. Why not? Just somebody totally random getting in the playoffs.
That'd be so fun. That'd be so cool.
It would be the 100th
that's what I was going to say. It'd be the 100th win for Wood Brothers if that happens. So Formula One, Max Verstappen.
You know, this sort of pains me to say this at this point, but Max Verstappen. I think for the Pick a Winner segment, we shouldn't be choosing who's going to win the pole for the race. We should be picking the rest of the podium, you know, second and third place. That would be real guesswork because we just know Max Verstappen's going to take it every time.
It's unanimous. Max Verstappen, I feel, just like how it was Shane Van Gisbergen last year in the supercars, Jamie Chadwick in W Series the year before, we just need to surrender. It's going to be Max Verstappen unless something goes wrong.
You know what we should do for Pick a Winner? For F1, we should say, pick who finishes 7th. Just random position. Who finishes 7th? So for that, I'll go with Oscar Piastri. He's going to have a big recovery. I'll go with that. So moving on to... Right? I think so too. So moving on to IndyCar, I'm going with Joseph Newgarden.
I'm going to make that 2 in a row and also go Joseph Newgarden.
Yeah, it's Newgarden. I mean, can't just go against him. He just looks too hard to beat. And I mean, I can't recall of a time where we've all been unanimous for IndyCar, F1, NASCAR. We could all be unanimously wrong if somebody else we didn't pick wins. So it's going to be really interesting. And of course, we're going to recap all the races tomorrow following the IndyCar race. And of course, we have a busy race week next week because it is race weekend for the Portland Grand Prix. We are going to be there at Portland International Raceway for the Grand Prix of Portland, sponsored by BitNile.com. And of course, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Hit the bell icon. We're going to be posting videos quite often throughout the week, including driver interviews, updates from the racetrack each and every day, and of course our special Sunday pre-race show for IndyCar, Formula One, NASCAR. They're going to be on the normal Saturday show, and then Monday, Labor Day, we're going to recap everything. So a very busy weekend, and a big way you can show your support for everyone here at the Grid Network. Buy me a coffee or the super chat below. Be sure to comment who the coffee is going to go to. We'll forward it to them. And you want to invest in the Grid Network as a whole, our Patreon link in the video description. And of course, we'll read your name at the beginning of the program. It's a big thing with Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, and David, our newest member, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. For Isha and Alex, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.